I used to think nightmares only came when you slept, until the night mine began while I was wide awake. It was past 2 a.m. in our home in Ikeja, the kind of home you pray for after years of hustling. A quiet street, high walls, flowers trimmed neatly by the gate. My husband, Pastor Daniel, had just returned from a 3-day revival at the church. We had prayed together before bed, or at least I thought we did. But something woke me up that night. At first, I thought it was the wind brushing through the mango tree. Then I realized the voice was human, deep, rhythmic, almost like a prayer, but darker and heavier. I turned and saw the space beside me was empty. "Daniel?" I whispered. No answer. I slipped out of bed, the cold marble floor biting at my feet, and moved toward the window. That's when I saw him. My husband, the man I had called man of God. He was in the backyard, shirtless, barefoot, standing beside the small garden we planted together. But it wasn't a garden anymore. It looked like a graveyard. Fresh mounds of earth, wooden crosses carved crudely, standing unevenly. And Daniel, he was holding something in his hand, a small calabash, glowing faintly like there was fire trapped inside. Then he did something that froze the blood in my veins. He whispered a name, a woman's name. Then he poured something from the calabash onto the soil, and the ground moved. I remember stepping back from the window, clutching my chest, trying not to scream. I wanted to believe it was a dream, that my husband, Pastor Daniel Olatunji, the same man who laid hands on people and made them walk, wasn't chanting in the dark over graves. But then he whispered another name. This time, it was mine. People say love blinds you. For me, it didn't just blind, it baptized me in illusion. I met Daniel during the Sunday service at the Fountain of Fire Assembly in Surulere. He wasn't the senior pastor then, just a young, fiery preacher with eyes that glowed like it saw straight into your soul. Everyone adored him. The way he spoke, the calmness in his voice, the miracles, the testimonies. I was drawn to him, not just because of the anointing, but because he listened. He noticed things. When my mother died, he was the one who came to pray in our house. When I got the job at the bank, he said it was divine favor. When he proposed, he didn't do it with a ring, he did it with prayer. He said, "Kemi, I didn't choose you. God revealed you." And I believed him. Our wedding was everything I ever dreamed. Our all in Lekki, gold and white decor, cameras flashing, people crying tears of joy. The church called it a divine union destined for ministry. But destiny, as I learned later, sometimes hid its teeth behind a smile. It started small. Church members would testify about how Pastor Daniel's touch brought instant healing. A crippled man walked again. A woman who had been barren for 8 years gave birth. A boy with cancer suddenly recovered. The crowd doubled. Offerings tripled. The fame spread beyond Lagos, even to Abuja, Port Harcourt, Ghana. But behind every miracle, there was loss. Each time a testimony surfaced, someone from the church went missing. A choir member, an usher, a woman from the prayer group. People said it was coincidence until I saw the list. A small leather-bound book Daniel kept locked in his drawer, names written in red ink, dates beside them, and beside each date a word, exchange. That night, when I saw him chanting outside, I knew the truth wasn't hiding anymore. The miracles weren't divine, they were bought with souls. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this story. But before we get back into the story, I noticed that only 6% of you are subscribed to this channel. Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss an upload. Thank you. Now let's get back to the story. They say curiosity kills the cat, but sometimes it also saves the soul. After that night, sleep became my enemy. Every creak of the house sounded like whispers from the backyard. Every sermon Daniel preached felt like a lie stitched together with scriptures. He still smiled at me every morning. He still kissed my forehead before leaving for prayer meetings. But I began to notice the smell, a strange earthy scent on his clothes, like wet soil mixed with candle wax. I started keeping a diary, not of my prayers, but of his movements. Days he went out, people who disappeared after his night vigils. The pattern was clear. One Thursday night, I followed him. He left the house at midnight. I waited 10 minutes, then grabbed my shawl and car keys. The rain had started, light at first, then heavy, washing the streets of Ikeja clean of sound. He drove to the church, Fountain of Fire Assembly. From the outside, it looked like any other modern mega church. Floodlights, glass doors, neatly packed cars. But that night, the compound was empty, silent. He unlocked the back gate with a key I had never seen before. I parked across the street, heart thudding, and ran through the rain toward the side wall. Through a small window near the pastor's office, I saw him. He was kneeling before the altar, shirt soaked, head bowed, but he wasn't praying to God. There was something else there with him. A shadow that didn't belong to any living thing. It moved when he didn't. And when Daniel raised his head, his eyes were rolled back white, and his voice was not his own. It echoed, deep and heavy, like 10 people speaking at once. The exchange is due. Bring her blood. Ha! Me! I stumbled back from the window, almost slipping on the wet tiles. I ran to my car and sat there, shivering, half from the cold, half from the horror. That night, I didn't go home. I drove around Lagos till dawn, headlights slicing through the rain, trying to make sense of what I had seen. Was my husband possessed? Or had he willingly become the vessel of something unholy? When I finally returned home the next morning, Daniel was already back. He was in the kitchen frying plantain, smiling like nothing happened. Where did you go last night? I asked. He looked up, smile unbroken. Prayer meeting. Why? I stared at him. At 2 a.m.? In a thunderstorm? He chuckled softly, wiped his hand on a towel. The devil doesn't sleep, Kemi. Neither should the children of light. Later that day, while he showered, I searched the house. I needed proof, something to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. That is when I found it. Behind our wardrobe, a hidden door panel, small, almost invisible. I pushed it open and froze. Inside was a small room lit by red candles. The walls were covered in verses, Bible scriptures written in blood, real blood. There were jars filled with dark liquid, photographs of church members, and at the center, a black box. Inside the box was my wedding ring, but that wasn't the worst part. Beside it was a piece of paper with my name and today's date. I stumbled out of the room just as Daniel's voice called from the bathroom. Kemi, where are you? I shoved the panel shut and pretended to be folding clothes. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time he turned in bed, I flinched. Every time he breathed, I wondered if he was still human. And yet, A part of me still hoped that love, prayer, something could save him. 3 nights later, I decided to confront him, not with fear, but with faith. I went into the secret room at midnight, clutching my Bible. I lit a candle and began to pray, loud, fierce, desperate. Every power of darkness hiding in my home, by the blood of Jesus. Then the mirror on the wall began to fall. Something moved behind the reflection. Faces, dozens of faces, men, women, children, pale, silent, their eyes hollow. And then one of them stepped forward, a young woman. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "He used us." I stumbled back, tears streaming down my face. "Who are you?" But before she could answer, the door creaked open. Daniel stood there. Half his face was in shadow, half lit by candlelight. "Why are you here, Kemi?" he asked calmly. I pointed at the mirror. "What is this? Who are they?" He didn't answer. He just smiled. "They are the price of faith," he said. "You wanted miracles. The world wanted proof that God is alive. But power has to come from somewhere." He stepped closer, cupping my face gently. His touch was ice. "Now it's your turn," he whispered. "The final exchange." I ran. I don't even remember grabbing my car keys on my phone. I just remember running, barefoot, tears mixing with sweat. I drove until my fuel tank blinked red, until the city lights blurred into streets. I stopped at a small guest house in Yaba. I didn't tell anyone where I was, not my friends, not the church. But that night, I dreamt. I saw Daniel standing at the altar, smiling as the congregation cheered. Behind him, the same shadow I had seen before grew taller, wider, feeding on the crowd's hallelujahs. And then, he turned and looked straight at me. Even though it was a dream, I swear he saw me. I thought running would end it, but it's only the beginning. Because last night, I woke up in this guest house and someone had slipped a note under my door. It had just one sentence: "You cannot run from covenant blood." I didn't open the door immediately. I just stared at the note, hands trembling, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. "You cannot run from covenant blood." The handwriting was neat, familiar. It was Daniel's. I saw the paper, threw it into the bin, and locked every window, every door. But I couldn't lock my mind. How did they find me? Was he outside? Was someone watching me? The guest room suddenly felt like a coffin. I turned off the light, sat on the floor and wept. But in the middle of that silence, something fell from the ceiling. A drop of water. Then another. I looked up and saw writing spreading across the ceiling in red, like blood forming words from nowhere. "The altar remembers." By morning, I decided to leave Lagos. I packed a small bag and boarded the bus to Abuja, where my cousin Titi lived. I didn't tell her anything on the phone. I just said I need to stay with you for a while. During the journey, I kept seeing faces, people from church, those who had gone missing, sitting in corners of the bus, smiling at me, then fading. By the end, we reached Lokoja. I was praying under my breath. When I arrived in Abuja that night, Titi hugged me tight. She was cheerful, loud as always, the opposite of my trembling silence. "Babe, you look pale. What's wrong?" she asked. I forced a smile. It's a long story. That night, she made me tea. As I sat on the balcony of her flat in Wuse 2, I finally felt safe until I saw her. A woman in a white gown standing across the street. barefoot, her hair dripping wet, even though there was no rain. She was staring at me. I blinked and she was gone. Later that night, when I went to the bathroom, I found muddy footprints on the tiles leading straight to the mirror. The next morning, I told Titi everything. The graves, the mirror, the whispering, the notes. She didn't laugh. She didn't doubt me either. Instead, she opened a drawer and brought out a brown file. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, she said, but I've been hearing stories about Daniel's church. Inside the file were newspaper clippings, reports of missing people from Lagos, Ibadan, and Port Harcourt, all connected to the Fountain of Fire Assembly. And at the bottom of the pile, an old photograph. It showed a group of men and women standing before a half-built church. Daniel was among them, looking much younger. But behind them, carved into the cement foundation, was a symbol. The same one I had seen drawn in blood in our secret room. He pointed to a face beside Daniel. Do you know her? I shook my head. She's his first wife, she said quietly, and she disappeared 5 years ago. That moment, something inside me cracked. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was realization. Daniel hadn't just been chosen by God, he had been claimed by something else long before he met me. That night, I dreamt again. Only this time, it didn't feel like a dream, it felt like memory. I was standing inside a dark church, candles flickering around me. Daniel was kneeling before an altar and a deep voice said, "For every miracle, a soul must rise beneath the earth." Then Daniel looked back at me and whispered, "You were part of the first covenant, Kemi. You just forgot." I woke up screaming. Titi rushed in, holding me, trying to calm me down, but my left hand was bleeding. A small cut across my palm, like something invisible had drawn it, and on the bed sheet beside me was a word written in my blood: awaken. It's been 3 days since that night. Daniel hasn't called again, but I know he is close. Sometimes I hear his voice when I close my eyes, calm, gentle and deadly. He keeps saying, "You cannot run from covenant blood." And deep down, I think he's right. Because this morning, when I looked in the mirror, I saw his reflection standing behind me, smiling. Have you ever looked at your reflection and felt like it was watching you back? That's how it has been. Every morning since that day. No matter where I go, I feel him. The weight of Daniel's presence pressing against the air. Sometimes it's in the mirror. Other times it's in the shadows that move when I don't. But this morning was different. There was blood dripping from the mirror's edge. My blood. When I wiped it, I saw something underneath. Symbols crashed into the glass. They matched the ones on the church floor back in Lagos. I screamed for Titi, but by the time she rushed in, the mirror was clean. No blood, no marks, just my reflection, pale, trembling, hollow. That's when Titi said something that shook me deeper than the visions. "Kemi, I think this isn't just Daniel's fight. I think he tied you into the covenant before you even met him." Titi took me to see someone that afternoon, a man people called Prophet Arowolo, who lived on the outskirts of Abuja. Not one of those flashy suit-wearing preachers. This one was old, quiet, with eyes that looked like they had seen both heaven and hell. He listened to everything. The graves, the mirror, the notes, the bleeding words. Then he said, "You were chosen as the living seal of his power." I frowned. What does that mean? He sighed, his voice barely above a whisper. A covenant like his demands balance, light bound to darkness. Daniel gave part of his soul for power, but he needed a pure vessel to keep the altar alive. That vessel is you. Titi grabbed my hand. "So what can we do to break it?" He looked at us, eyes sad. "You cannot break what was sealed in blood. You can only transfer it or end it." My stomach twisted. end it? He looked at me steadily. Yes, with fire. That night, Prophet Arowolo gave me a small bottle of oil and a white cloth marked with ancient Yoruba symbols. He said, when the shadows call again, don't run, stand your ground, call his name and call the one who owns all names. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the guest room with the oil in my hand, heart pounding, waiting for something I couldn't see but could feel. Around 2:13 a.m., the room went cold. The lights flickered, then died. And there he was, Daniel, standing in the corner, not in flesh, but in shadow. Tall, dark, eyes burning red like coals under water. He smiled. You can't hide forever, Kemi. My voice trembled, but I stood. You made a vow to darkness, Daniel, but I never did. He stepped closer, the floor beneath him cracking slightly. You were the vow, my love. I raised the oil, shouted in the name of Jesus. He screamed, a sound that wasn't human. The windows shattered. The mirror exploded. Flames burst around the edges of the room like fire obeying an iron cord. Then silence. When I opened my eyes, the room was filled with smoke. Daniel was gone, but on the wall, written in ash, were the words, "The altar is not destroyed, only silenced." I thought that would be the end of it, but deep inside, I know it wasn't over. Prophet Arowolo said if the covenant was silent, it would search for another voice, another vessel. And last night, I dreamt of her again, the woman in white. Only this time she spoke. He is rebuilding the altar in Abuja. I woke up with ashes on my bedsheet, shaped like a cross. I've left everything behind. My house, my job, even my name. But somehow, the altar still knows me. Because just this morning, I received a message. No number, no name, just one line. Sunday service begins soon, and your seat is still reserved. I think I know where I must go next. Back to the altar that bled. I didn't pack a bag this time. I only took the white cloth Prophet Arowolo gave me, the small bottle of oil, and the leather-bound book I had stolen from Daniel's drawer. The one with the names and the word exchange. The text message sat on my screen like an eye that wouldn't blink. Sunday service begins soon, and your seat is still reserved. I sent Titi a single line. If I don't text by midnight, burn the room where I slept. She called. I didn't pick. I took a bold taxi to the edge of Jahi, where a new branch of Fountain of Fire Assembly was rising from raw concrete. It wasn't finished, scaffolding like ribs, plastic chairs stacked in shadow, floodlight omen. But the gate was open. The security guard never looked up from his radio. He just waved me in like he had been expecting me. Inside, the hall was a skeleton, bare pillars, fresh paint, the clean ache of cement, a plastic banner hung across the half-built altar. Sunday of Wonders, Abuja outpouring. I walked forward. Every step sounded too loud, like the floor was listening. When I reached the altar, I saw it. The symbol carved shallow into the concrete. The same one from Lagos. The same one from our secret room. Only this one had something added. A second ring. Faint, like a wedding band sketched around a curse. Footsteps behind me. I turned. Daniel walked out from the side corridor. Suit immaculate. Collar white as bone. He looked like he had just stepped off a billboard. Handsome, calm, holy. He smiled softly. You came. I held the white cloth tighter. You left me no choice. Oh, Kemi. He stopped 2 steps away. His voice tender enough to break a stone. There are always choices. You can still come back. You can still sit where you are meant to sit. On an altar built with stolen names? I raised the leather book with blood that isn't yours. His eyes flicked to the book, then to the symbol at our feet. For a second, the air thinned. You've been reading what you don't understand, he said gently. Power has a language. Covenant has a math. Then teach me, I whispered, what math demands a wife. A shadow moved at the edge of the hall. Then another. Faces gathered in the dark like smoke had learned to wear skin. The woman in white among them, head dripping, feet bare. Daniel didn't look away from me. You were not demanded, he said softly. You were selected. The altar needs balance. Light needs a lamp. Fire needs oil. I gave what I had. You became what I lacked. I uncapped the little bottle in my fist. The smell of frankincense rose and caught the air. And what if the lamp refuses to be used? I asked. Then the flame finds another cloth. His gaze slid past me toward the entrance. Titi stood there. She had come anyway, stubborn heart, loud spirit, tears already bright. She held a jerrycan in one hand and a box of matches in the other. I'm not a sacrifice, she said, voice steady. Try me and the whole city will see. A smile ticked at the corner of Daniel's mouth. Not amused, something like admiration. I always liked you, Titi. You never pretend. The woman in white stepped closer to me. No sound, just presence, like cold pressed to the back of my neck. Her lips moved. This time I heard her. He will not burn with fire. He must drown in his own. My mouth went dry. Who are you? I whispered without moving my lips. Her eyes softened. A grief that felt like a forgotten hymn. First covenant. The shape of her name formed soundlessly. Ifunanya. My stomach folded. Titi's fire hadn't lied. Ifunanya turned, lifted her hand and pointed at the symbol on the floor. Only then did I see it. Her hairline crack splitting the second ring, thin as a spider's thread. Balance. Transfer. End it. Prophet Arowolo's voice returned to me, dry as raffia. You cannot break what was sealed in blood. You can only transfer it or end it with fire. I stepped onto the carved cycle. The concrete pulsed under my feet like a sleeping heart. Kemi, Daniel murmured, reaching out. Palm open. Pastor soft. Don't make this a spectacle. Calm down. No, I said. Let's finish it in the language you respect. I laid the white cloth at the exact center of the symbol. I poured the oil until the fabric darkened and shone. I slit my left palm with the edge of the leather cover, a thin hot sting, and let 3 drops fall onto the cloth. The whole breathed in. A current ran up my legs, through my spine, into my jaw. The air tested of copper and storms. The floodlights flickered. Once, twice. Daniel's face changed. Not the features, the temperature. The smile drained, leaving something older. You learned fast, he said, but you learned wrong. Deep layered echo, a voice that is 10 voices. The seal returns. The vessel kneels. The floor around the symbol darkened like ink-soaking paper. Wet footprints appeared, cycling us. Dozens, hundreds. The congregation of the drowned. The plastic chairs rattled. The half-built walls began to sweat. Titi shouted from the doorway, Kemi, now! She splashed a ring of petrol across the front row. Matches chalk. A thin line of flame crawled forward, testing the cement, licking the edges of the altar steps. Heat rose. The symbol paused. I lifted the cloth, heavy with oil and my blood, and wrapped it around my left hand. Then I called his name, not Daniel, the name above all names. In the name of Jesus! The floor collapsed inward like a throat swallowing. A narrow pit opening beneath the carved cycle. Wind roared out of it, cold and ancient. The shadow surged up, towering, a column of night threaded with embers. Ifunanya stepped between us and the shadow, palms raised. Balance is not payment, she whispered. It is return. She pressed her palm to the second ring, the faint wedding band around the curse, and pushed. The airline crack widened. Daniel lunged, faster than thought, hand clamping my wrist. His fingers were ice and iron. His eyes bled red around the white. You would see what keeps the miracles alive, he hissed. Good, I said, and drove my bleeding palm into the center of the cloth-wrapped flame. Fire bloomed, not hot orange, but white, clean, the kind that doesn't burn things. It unveils them. It ran up my arm, across the cycle, down into the open throat of the church. The shadows screamed. Windows spider-webbed. The banner tore in a straight line. The floodlights all died at once. The generator choked and went silent. For a heartbeat, everything was perfect. Then the altar exhaled. A column of blackbirds burst from the pit. Crows or bats or something older that learned the shape of both, spiraling toward the ceiling and vanishing through concrete that they didn't bother to break. The cycle stopped pulsing. The crack became a gash, then a seam, then two clean halves that refused to touch. Daniel fell to one knee. His hand slid off my wrist like he had forgotten why he was holding it. Sweat ran down his temple. He looked at me, not as a pastor, not as a vessel, but as a man who had carried the coffin inside his chest for too long. Kemi, he said hoarsely, I can't hear it. He was listening for the voice. It was gone. I should have felt triumph, relief, something like freedom. But the woman in white was staring past him, past me, toward the back wall. Her eyes were wide with the fear I hadn't seen on her face before. I turned. There, in the last row, where the flame had leaked and gone out, a shape stood up. Thin suit, polished shoes, wire-rimmed glasses catching the flicker of dying fire. The assistant pastor. Quiet, efficient, always behind the scenes. The one who printed the flyers, counted the offering, locked the doors. He smiled, small and precise. Then he raised the calabash I hadn't seen him holding a second ago, and the faint glow inside it fled, like a newborn star learning to breathe. Daniel's breath hitched. Olu. The assistant pastor tilted his head. You taught me the math, sir. His voice was gentle, respectful, deadly. When the first vessel breaks, the covenant looks for the next voice. It does not like silence. He turned the calabash slightly. The light inside moved like liquid fire. The symbol on the floor, severed, quiet, answered with a new softer pulse, not from below, from above, from him. Ifunanya's hand closed around my elbow. It learned. Tete ran to me, breath tearing, eyes blazing. We end it, Kemi. We finish this now. I looked at Daniel, kneeling, unmoored, something human and something hollow fighting behind his eyes. I looked at the assistant, calm, exact, ready. I looked at the cloth in my fist, stained with oil and my blood, edges esteemed wife. Prophet Arowolo's voice was a whisper at the back of my skull. You can transfer it or end it. I stepped forward, placing myself between the calabash and the circle, the living and the math. My voice shook, but it did not break. No more exchanges, I said. No more altars, no more vessels. The assistant pastor blinked slowly. That's not how the equation works. Then we break the table it sits on. I lifted the cloth, felt the last hit in its weave, and spoke the name again. Not like a weapon this time, but like a door. Something opened. Not the floor, the ceiling. Rain hammered down from a sky that hadn't been cloudy a minute earlier. A sudden, violent downpour poured through concrete like it was memory. A flood that ignored physics and favored timing. The calabash sputtered, hissed, fought the water, then cracked like egg on that thumb. Light bled out and died on the wet cement. The assistant pastor flinched for the first time. Daniel gasped, a sound like a man waking into pain. The all shook, but not with darkness, with the stubborn, ordinary roar of rain on a city that had seen too much fire. For a breath, all of us stood in it, soaked, blinking, unbelieving. Then phones started buzzing in pockets. Not one, dozens, all at once. Titi pulled hers out, her face drained. She turned the screen to me with a hand that wouldn't hold still. It was a live stream. Fountain of Fire Assembly Lagos, the original altar. Thousands of comments flooding upward like ants. Camera shaking. Sirens in the background. The headline pinned across the bottom pierced the rain. Sunday of Wonders. Emergency. Mass healing turns to mass hysteria. The feed zoomed past the altar. Not broken, not burning. Into the car park where people were kneeling, laughing, crying, speaking in voices that weren't theirs. And in the far corner, under the mango tree, fresh mounds of earth being pushed up from below like something had no more patience for being buried. The assistant pastor smiled again, softer now, almost kind. The altar, he said quietly, doesn't need a building. He put his phone away, straightened his cuffs, and walked backward into the rain until the night took him like a door closing without a sound. If Naya was gone too, not the way people live, the way a candle forgets it used to be fire. Daniel looked at me, rain in his lashes, collar bent, smaller than he had ever looked in his life. What have I done? He whispered. I pressed the cloth to my palm, felt the sting, the beat, the choice. We will answer that later, I said. Right now, we go where the ground is moving. Titi squeezed my shoulder. Lagos? Lagos. I picked up the ruined calabash. Even broken, it hummed like a trapped bee. As we turned to leave, my phone vibrated. A new message. Unknown number. My stomach sank as I opened it. No name, no number, just one line. The altar does not follow you, Kemi. It remembers who you follow. I stared at the words until they blurred, then wiped the screen with the back of my hand and slid the phone into my pocket. We stepped into the rain. The city swallowed us whole. The drive back to Lagos felt endless. The road glistened like glass, headlights slicing through mist that refused to lift. Daniel sat in the back seat, silent, drenched, hands trembling slightly as though something inside him was still being shaken out. Titi drove, knuckles white on the steering wheel. And me, I watched the road, replaying every word the prophet had ever said. It doesn't die with fire, it sleeps. I whispered under my breath, then maybe it's time we wake it the right way. When we reached Ikeja, the air felt wrong. Even before we turned into our street, I could smell it. That heavy mix of wet soil and candle wax. the same smell that used to cling to Daniel's clothes. As we approached, we saw people outside, kneeling in the rain, faces lifted, eyes rolled white. Some were crying, others smiling like they had just seen heaven itself. But none of them were really there. They were the church members, the missing ones, every single name from Daniel's book. Titi whispered, "Oh my God." I tightened my grip on the oil bottle. Not yet. We pulled up in front of the old house, our house, and our hearts stopped. The garden was gone. In its place were fresh graves again. But this time there were candles burning beside each one. The wax was black. And in the middle, the mango tree was bleeding. Thick sap dripping red down its back like open veins. Daniel got out first. He walked toward the gate, slowly, head bowed like he was walking into his own funeral. "Kemi," he said softly, not looking back. "If this thing takes me again, don't save me." The wind eased, carrying a faint voice between the graves. The covenant is memory. Memory is blood. Titi opened the car door. What was that? I looked around. The air shimmered and then I saw them. Dozens of shadows rising from the soil, like smoke trying to remember the shape of people. They surrounded us, faces blurred, movements fluid, but the sound they made was clear. Rain. But not in words we understood. Daniel stepped forward, raised both hands. Enough! His voice cracked through the night like a whip. The shadows froze. Then one of them, a woman, stepped closer. It was Ifunaya. Her white gown was soaked with rain. Her face pale but peaceful now. She reached out and touched Daniel's chest. "You cannot end what you did not begin," she whispered, "but you can return what you borrowed." He closed his eyes. "Then take it." Her hand sank into his chest, literally as if the air and his flesh were just fabric. Daniel gasped, mouth open, eyes wide, trembling violently. Light burst from the point of contact, blinding, pure, searing. The other shadows began to dissolve into ash, floating upward like smoke finally released. When the light dimmed, Daniel collapsed. I ran to him. His pulse was weak but steady. Titi knelt beside me, tears mixing with the rain. "Is he?" "He's alive," I said, "but not the same." Daniel opened his eyes. No red, no white, just the deep brown I fell in love with years ago. He looked at me with a kind of exhaustion that was beyond sleep. "It's over," he whispered. But even as he said it, thunder rolled. Deep, heavy, deliberate. The ground beneath us trembled. Titi looked up. "No, Kemi, look!" The graves were collapsing inward like mouths closing after a meal. From beneath the soil, something glowed. A single massive symbol burned through the ground, connecting every grave like veins to her heart. The cycle we destroyed in Abuja rebelled here, alive. But this time, it pulsed to my heartbeat. Daniel's eyes widened. "Kemi, the altar, it shifted to you." The realization hit like ice water. Prophet Arowolo's words echoed. "You cannot break it. You can only transfer it." Daniel had given up his old. The altar needed another vessel, and it had chosen me. Lightning struck the mango tree. The whole yard exploded in white fire. Soil bursting upward. Wind howling. The scent of ozone and burnt wax filling the air. I screamed as the light surged through me, not burning but invading. Visions flashed like broken glass. Faces of the lost, smiling, fading. Daniel's first sermons, his first miracles, The moment I knelt before that dark altar years ago and said my name for the first time. And then a figure cloaked in shadow, watching all of it. Not Daniel, not me, something older. A voice thundered inside my head, layered like echoes from eternity. The balance is restored. The vessel is prepared. My knees hit the ground. The oil bottle shattered beside me, flames hissing where the liquid touched. Titi shouted, "Kemi, fight it! Don't let it in!" But I couldn't move, because the shadow, the true one, was stepping out of the light, forming in front of me. It wasn't a demon. It wasn't human. It was the altar, the spirit itself, now wearing the face of something divine. It spoke, calm and terrible. He borrowed, you inherit. The fire around me turned blue. The voices of the dead rose again, chanting softly in unison. Titi tried to rush forward, but Daniel held her back. His face was soaked in tears. "She can't be saved," he whispered. "She is a covenant now." I turned to him, my voice trembling but clear. "Maybe I can rewrite it." The entity tilted its head. "You presume to change the tongue of blood?" I clenched my fists. Yes, because I remember who I follow. The flames fled, engulfing everything. When the light cleared, there was silence. The graves were gone. The yard empty. No ash, no candles, no blood. Just morning sunlight breaking through grey clouds. Titi was kneeling beside Daniel's body, lifeless this time, peaceful. She looked up at me, sobbing. "He's gone." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because my reflection in the puddle beside my feet was smiling back at me, but it wasn't me. Its eyes were black, endless, ancient, and beneath his voice, mine echoed softly. "Sunday service begins soon." I looked up. In the distance, across the city's skyline, a new church banner fluttered in the wind. Fountain of Fire Assembly, Rebirth Conference, Abuja. The altar had moved again. Only this time, it carried my name. The morning after Daniel's death, the air felt deceptively calm. Birds sang. The sun rose. But deep in my chest, something pulsed. Slow, steady, rhythmic, like another heart had learned to beat beneath mine. Titi sat across from me in silence. She hadn't changed her clothes. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Between us on the table lay Daniel's cracked wedding ring and the burnt edge of the white cloth Prophet Arowolo had given me. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, she said, "Kemi, what happened last night wasn't human. That thing," she swallowed hard, "it looked at you like it knew you." I stared at my hands. They were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from energy. "When Daniel died," I said slowly, "something left him. But it didn't just vanish, it moved into me." I looked up at her. "Titi, I think I'm the altar now." She pushed back a chair. "No, don't say that." But it was true. I could feel it. Every whisper in the air. Every prayer carried by wind. Every desperate cry in the city. It brushed against me like invisible fingers, tugging, pleading, feeding. And in the distance, somewhere in Abuja, the new church, the Rebirth Conference, was calling. We went back to Prophet Arowolo's compound that afternoon. The old man sat outside under a neem tree, his white wrapper fluttering in the breeze. His eyes found mine before I even spoke. "You opened the altar," he said quietly. I nodded. "You ended in," he continued, "but the covenant doesn't end, it shifts." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm here." He studied me for a long moment, then reached into his robe and pulled out a small iron mirror, dark and ancient. Its surface crashed with Yoruba symbols. This mirror, he said, was forged from the Orisha of balance. It reveals what is inside, not what is shown. Look. I hesitated, then took it. When I looked into the mirror, my reflection wasn't me. My face was pale, eyes hollow, veins glowing faintly gold beneath the skin. And behind me stood hundreds of silhouettes, souls, waiting, whispering. The altar, Arowolo said, feeds on unfulfilled prayers. Those who died crying to heaven without answer. It gathers them. That is why it is powerful. He leaned closer. But now, Kemi, it obeys you. The mirror trembled in my hand. What do I do with it? I asked. He smiled sadly. He decided whether to become what he was or what he couldn't be. That night, I dreamed again. I was standing inside a vast cathedral made of light. Thousands of candles burned in mid-air, and every flame whispered a name. Voices of the last, the healed, the forgotten. Then I heard Daniel's voice behind me, soft, gentle, familiar. Kemi, he said, it doesn't have to be a curse. I turned, and he was there, dressed in white, smiling, human again. The altar listens to whoever owes the blood, he said. You can command it. Heal the world. Fix what I broke. He stretched out his hand. All you have to do is keep it fed. I felt the pull, the warmth, the promise, the power. It was intoxicating. The same voice that had once called him had now found a new tone through me. But then I remembered the graves, the faces, the missing. I stepped back. I'm not you, Daniel. He smiled, fading. We will see. When I woke up, my phone was ringing. Unknown number. No name. I answered. A voice, female, calm but cold. Miss Olatunji, you don't know me, but I know you. I'm calling from Fountain of Fire, Abuja branch. The overseer wants to see you. I froze. Who is the overseer? He says he's continuing your husband's work. My hand tightened around the phone. Tell him I'll come. Titi jumped up. You are not serious, Kemi. You can't go back there. I have to, I said. If I don't end this, it will spread. Because deep down, I could feel it. The altar wasn't contained in one place anymore. It was spreading like roots, planting itself in every city where Daniel had once preached. The new branch sat on a hill overlooking Jabi Lake. It was unfinished, again, half cement, half vision. But hundreds of people already filled the compound, singing praises, their voices eerily synchronized, like one mind controlling many mouths. At the center of the altar stood a man in white, tall, clean-shaven, confident. He smiled when he saw me. Welcome, Prophetess Kemi. I stiffened. I am not a prophetess. He spread his arms. The altar disagrees. The crowd murmured, hundreds of eyes turning towards me. You destroyed the vessel, he said, stepping closer. Now it wants resurrection through you. He gestured to the ground and I saw it. The new seal, brighter, deeper, alive. He extended his hand. Lead them. And for a split second, I felt it. The surge, the fire, the overwhelming power waiting to obey. I could have healed every sick person in that crowd. I could have raised the dead. I could have been everything Daniel claimed to be. But I saw the cost in the overseer's eyes. He was already Olo. I whispered, no more blood. Then I lifted my hands, and for the first time, the altar listened to defiance. The symbol on the floor cracked, lightning splitting it from end to end. The ground quaked. The roof beams groaned. The congregation screamed as wind and flame twisted together, rising like a tornado of light. The overseer shouted, "You can't silence what you are." "I am not silence," I said. "I am redemption." The flame swallowed him whole. By dawn, the church was gone, burnt to ash. No bodies, no smoke, just silence and a field of white lilies growing where the altar had stood. Titi found me standing among them, barefoot, eyes glowing faintly gold. She whispered, "It's over, right?" I turned to her slowly, "For now." But in the wind beneath the quiet, I could still hear it, the faint rhythmic pulse of something ancient, moving, waiting. And when I looked down, I saw words forming in the soil beside my feet. "You broke the altar. Now become the altar." Every generation builds its own gods. Maybe mine was meant to burn the one we made. But if the altar lives in me now, then I will use it for one thing, to haunt what created it. Kemi's journey to Oyo begins with an ancient calling, a connection to blood and power that spans generations. After hearing cryptic whispers and dreaming of a past she doesn't fully understand, Kemi travels south, guided by an unseen force. Despite Titi's warnings, she follows the pole that leads her to a village near Old Oyo National Park, where a hidden chapel stands over an ancient altar. In the chapel, Kemi encounters a mysterious woman, the first keeper of the altar, who reveals that the altar was built by missionaries who replaced indigenous power with their own, using blood sacrifices. Kemi learns that Daniel, her husband, had been unknowingly chosen by the altar's influence, which had fed off his miracles, until Kemi stopped it. Now, however, the altar has shifted its focus to Kemi, calling her to either destroy it or let it rise again, claiming future generations. Kemi descends into the altar's heart, where she confronts its dark power. The altar, alive with energy, offers her a choice: to keep the power it gave her or to end the cycle. Touched by the faces of those who had prayed for help, Kemi remembers Daniel's voice urging her to end it. She places the prophet's mirror on the altar, and the entire cavern shakes. A burst of light and fire consumes the altar, silencing its power once and for all. When Kemi wakes, she is outside, the ruins replaced by wild flowers. The prophet's mirror lies beside her, now dark and lifeless. Titi is there, and the two of them walk away, knowing the cycle is forever broken. Though the altar's fire has been extinguished, Kemi knows the power it once held will never truly fade. It simply waits, hidden, in the shadows of time, binding its moment to rise again. But for now, Kemi and Titi walk on, free from the chains of the past, yet aware that the world is full of unfinished stories, waiting for their turn to unfold. And somewhere, deep beneath the earth, the altar remembers. A child running by with a glowing bowl reminds Kemi that nothing truly dies. It just finds a new story. As they leave, the wind carries a final whisper, a reminder that the altar remembers, its power never fully gone. If you enjoyed this journey and want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Join our community and be first to experience the next chapter in our epic adventures. Let's dive deeper together. Subscribe now and never miss out on the next story. Bye.